Want to put you in the corner. I don't know who arranged the seat. I really feel bad. I mean, you're the only lady panelist. We should have been sitting in the center. And this question also coming to you at the, later part of the session. But let me assure you, we are very important here, I know. And I'll tell you why, because the August gathering here are from a steel making process stream that deserves or demands a lot of scrap, right? And you being an advisor to MRAI can add a lot of value in our discussions. And so my question to you is, as we've seen India's, induction furnace process consumes nearly 42% of the scrap today. And with the increasing capacity, both in the LP and let's say planned expansion in the flat side, we are going to probably reach a stage where we are short on scrap, yes. Right? Our estimate says that by 20, at a steady state of growth, we will require about 50 million ton only for LP. So add, let's say, कबल जी कितना आ सकता है और तो 5 million ton तो minimum आएगा flat में. तो add 5 million ton equivalent of the scrap. We are going to run out of scrap.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that, and how we could create an ecosystem that is more sustainable, which will help IFs make that informed decisions?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. In fact, the question here is not just about scrap, because that is the scarcity of raw material, but it is also about the entire industry's survival. Because what we are looking at is that today steel sector is the second largest in the world, I mean Indian steel sector. Yes. And if we are going to have shortage, that means it's going to affect our economy, it's going to affect our GDP, and it is also going to affect many other things in the country. So, because especially when we look at the way our construction industry is going to boom, today in for 1,000 people, we are just 3 houses which are there. But the requirement is for minimum will be at least another 5 more. So which means our construction industry also will boom, so we require more steel. So if we look at all this, then the scrap, dependency on scrap is very, very important. But in business as usual with all of you today, most of you are importing steel scrap. So which means our dependency on this has to get reduced, because we know that there is protectionism across the world and they are not going to give us enough waste. Sure. So which means we have to look towards India itself. And what do? Which again is not the current system, but we have to have a non-formal approach, which means our informal sector we have to tap. And we have to get the waste from every nook and corner of the country. The second one is to have policies which will help in bringing certain different type of waste, that is the ELV, end of life vehicles, make available that to all the recyclers. So, or not only recyclers, for all the production in the steel. So for all this, one is the good policy, and the other one is that we need to have clear systems in place for logistics. And this, by having this kind of a good logistic system, wherein like a hub and spoke or whatever, where we have all this in the right proportion, coming to the, making available to all the industries is a very good approach which we need to look at. This is also climate friendly, and if you're talking about circular economy, this is the way to go. So
yes, ma'am. Leading question to that is, so question always is who will create and own it, right? So government did have announced a lot of plans with respect to availability, increased availability of scrap through ELV, etc. But we have seen the progress. Now, you know how Nucor in the US works. Yes. And you also said about some local examples that we can actually bring forth. So someone has to own it up. Is it possible that our investor friends here who also looks at diversification could also own that as a potentially a profit center and run it as a profit center?
Yes, it is possible. But in this context, I would also like to draw your attention on another thing. When we are talking about scrap usage, today there is also a shift from the small, the neighborhood recyclers to big players taking away all the waste from or the raw material away from the small players. Now, whether that is right, wrong, in terms of business, it is very bad for the small players. But when it comes to emissions and other things, it is always good because a centralized approach is always good. But for this, we need to look at how it can be, I mean, a model can be created wherein the small players will aggregate and they will have only certain value addition, like maybe melting and making alloys and then supplying to the big players. So
Yeah,
if
good
this
point.
kind of mechanisms can be developed in the country, then I think that will go a long way to build the business also, I mean, among this fraternity, and also to look at other aspects like climate change, circularity, and increasing the economy of our country. Because the best steel, the type of steels which all of them were mentioning, and the diversifications, for all this, we need to have big players' best technologies. Now, we know IF is a very good method for using the scrap. So, similarly, our country should come out with good technologies which will help in setting up this. So it's not just that
Got
policy,
it.
but ourselves, we need to look at good technology, innovative technologies, and methods or processes in such a way that everything comes in place.
Got it. Thank you so much for those remarks. Since you're talking about technology, you'll have to wait, Engine. Mr. Kapoor, as a veteran in design, engineering, and setting up of the plant, we